Good evening. It's another Monday, and I have got another book I want to talk about. There's only one book, so it will be brief. I know I say that at the beginning of every video, but this time, for sure, it will be brief. So let's just get started. I'm talking about Donald Ray Pollock's The Devil All the Time. Now, I'm going to admit I only decided to read this book because I saw the trailer for the Netflix adaptation, which came out a couple weeks ago, starring Tom Holland, Rob Pattinson, Sebastian Stan, all those other big names. And I didn't really know what it was about, but I saw the skinned corpse that was nailed to a cross, and I just thought immediately, this is going to be a horror novel, and it's going to be in the style of the game Outlast 2. I was wrong on that front. I saw an interview with Tom Holland after I finished reading the book where he classifies this, like The Devil All the Time, as a small-town gothic horror. I think that's a pretty appropriate description for it. The book takes place in 3 different towns, 2 which are next to each other in Ohio. One is in West Virginia. The main character, Arvin Russell, played by Tom Holland in the movie, is a boy at the very beginning, and he spends the first 9 or 10 years of his childhood in one of the Ohio towns called Knockemstiff. Now, when I first heard this name, I thought, that's a funny thing to name a town, and then I wondered, how did Donald Ray Pollock even come up with it? So it turns out I googled it, it's a real place, and Pollock himself grew up there, which then made me wonder if one or more of the events that happened in this book were actually inspired by real life things, which would be so terrifying because this book is fucked up. I am not kidding. I felt like I had to pick my jaw off the ground when I was done reading it and go, what the fuck is wrong with all these people? I then went and looked up interviews with the author just so I could see why he decided to write this book. And consequently, I found out that he actually worked in a paper mill, and like I think 13 miles from Knockemstiff, like the real life Knockemstiff, for 45 years before he decided to pick up writing, and almost immediately he became successful and then made up his mind that he liked writing about dark things. Now I think dark is rather an understatement in this case, because I honestly felt after I finished the book that I needed to go take a shower because I felt very grubby just from witnessing all the disgusting things that happened through the page. But I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because despite how grossed out I was, I just couldn't stop reading. I think they call that train wreck syndrome, right? When something's really awful or revolting, but you just can't look away because you're kind of fascinated by it. It's like morbidly fascinating. So aside from Arvin and a few other characters, everybody else is just super depraved. And I wanted to finish the book just so I could see if they got their comeuppance. The last chunk of the book in particular, where everybody's stories in the 3 towns start to overlap with each other's, that was super suspenseful, and the story, in my opinion, wrapped up nicely. So I guess overall I did like the book, even though it made me feel like I needed to go and pray, which I haven't prayed in a while. But anyways, I felt like I needed to pray for all these characters because they seriously need Jesus, which is funny because there is a lot of church going and praying and preaching and Jesus in this book, but it didn't seem to help everybody much. So anyways, like after that, like you would think I'd want to step away, you know, take a break, but nope, I went right ahead and I watched the movie, and I actually really liked it. I thought everybody was a bit too good looking and fit to play the characters, because Pollock describes many of them as like homely looking, or like the male characters, many of them have pot bellies or just like, you know, like beer bellies just from drinking and eating too much. But you know, it's Hollywood, so I'm not very surprised. I do know they made Rob Pattinson wear a fat suit because there's a scene in the movie where he throws himself over a church pew, and he says in an interview that the false belly he was wearing cushioned his fall. So, you know, like, not that I noticed because, like, honestly, I thought he looked pretty fit, just maybe, like, a bit more well-fed than he normally looks, but like, I could not tell he was wearing a fat suit. I could tell Sebastian Stan was wearing a fat suit, either that or he actually gained weight for the role, but I don't know, like, after a while, like, even when I thought the characters didn't really fit, like, the actors didn't really fit, I got used to it. And also, like I said, this is a cast that, like most people probably recognize, and it was kind of weird to see some people, like, for example, like Dudley Dursley plays this, like, overzealous preacher, and it was just so, not Dudley Dursley, the actor who plays Dudley Dursley, but I don't know, it was strange seeing Dudley Dursley, or who I've always known as Dudley Dursley, preaching and just going, you know, being wild and crazy in a church. It was so strange. Anyways, I know, like, in what are the differences? Like, key differences I've noted. Like, so the book, in there, things are described in excruciating, horrific, disgusting detail, especially the descriptions of scent or stench, like rotting flesh, sickness, trash, sweat, so on and so forth. And obviously in the movie, I can't smell shit through the screen, so everything looked and felt much brighter and cleaner to me, which I liked because, like I said, I'm a germaphobe, and I would have been so disgusted by if I could actually smell it in 4K or something. But I also felt like the more beautiful moments, such as like the scenes where Arvin's like singing with his mom in their kitchen, or the families talking to each other and like supporting each other while they're riding in their car. Like these scenes just stand out more in the movie, and they make things seem less bleak and desperate despite the character surroundings. And they definitely toned down on the gore and made everything less graphic because, but despite all that, it was still pretty fucking graphic because this book, no lie, has trigger warnings all over it. Like you've got animal sacrifices, illness, vomit, rape, sexual grooming, serial killers, mutilation, pedophilia in the name of the Lord, which sounds like freaking bizarre, but you know, you'll see what I mean if you end up reading it. And what else? Murder, and also the characters that display homosexual like sexual preferences are depicted in a very negative light, although you can argue that almost everybody, regardless of sexuality, was depicted in a negative light, but I thought I'd mention it. One thing I really liked about the movie is the use of the narrator, because in the book, like there are passages that are like narrated and by an omniscient narrator, and I think, or actually I think it's from a third person point of view, but basically there were things that I was worried would not translate well to the screen, but since they used Donald Ray Pollock, the author, as a narrator, I don't know, it really worked, so kudos to whoever came up with that idea. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and end here before I go way over time again, but you know, thanks for listening. Good night.